Hello, my dearest students. A very, very warm welcome to all of you. I know, your exams are coming up so soon, but please don't worry at all. Today, we're going to tackle one of the most fun and heartwarming chapters you have, Mijbil the Otter. So let's get right into it, shall we?
So, let me ask you something, Beta. Have you ever wanted a pet? Of course you have. You've probably dreamed of a cute little puppy or maybe a fluffy kitten, right? But have you ever in your wildest dreams thought about keeping an otter? I mean, an otter. Sounds a bit crazy, doesn't it? Well, guess what? The author of our story did exactly that.
All right, let's jump in. The first question that has to be on your mind is, why an otter, bhai? I mean, seriously, it's not like you see them in the park every day, right? So let's find out what on earth made our otter go for such a, unique choice.
So the story actually starts on a bit of a sad note. You see, our author, Gavin Maxwell, was living all alone in a very remote part of Scotland, and he had just lost his beloved dog, Johnny. After that, he was just so incredibly lonely. You can imagine, right? His house, his whole life, just felt completely quiet and empty without a furry friend by his side.
So, feeling pretty down, he travels to Iraq. And one day, while chatting with a friend, he mentions how much he misses having a pet. And that's when his friend comes up with this totally out-of-the-box idea. He says, hey, why don't you get an otter? He told him that in the Tigris marshes there, otters were as common as anything, and that the local Arabs often kept them as pets. And just like that, a little seed of an idea was planted.
And now, bachon, the moment you've all been waiting for. The star of our show, the hero of our story, is about to make his grand entrance. So let's get ready for Mijbil's key entry.
Okay, just imagine this. Maxwell is sitting in his room in Basra. Suddenly, two men walk in. They have a note from his friend and a sack. They put the sack on the floor. And then it squirms. It moves. Can you just feel the suspense? I mean, what could possibly be inside that wriggling sack?
And when he opens it, out comes our hero Mijbil. But listen, he was not the cute, sleek, shiny otter you might be imagining. Oh no, not at all. He was completely covered in mud from head to toe. It actually took Maxwell an entire month of gentle cleaning before he could finally see Mijbil's real, beautiful, soft, chocolate-brown fur underneath.
You know, I just love how the author describes him at first. He says Mijbil looked like a small, medievally conceived dragon. Isn't that just a brilliant way to put it? So creative. And honestly, Mijbil's behavior was a bit strange at first, too. He was very aloof, very distant. He didn't want anything to do with Maxwell and would sleep as far away from him as possible.
Okay, now listen very carefully. This is a super important point for your exams, okay? This little otter that Maxwell named Mijbil, well, it turns out he belonged to a species that was completely unknown to science. No one had ever seen it before. And because Maxwell was the one who found him, the zoologist actually named the species after him. Lutrogale perspiculiata maxwelli. Please remember that name. It's practically a guaranteed mark on your exam paper.
So, if you had to pick just one single word, one word to describe the entire existence of an otter, what would it be? It would have to be this: water. You see, for an otter, water isn't just for drinking or having a bath. No way. Water is a toy, it's a playground, it's a best friend, it's absolutely everything.
And believe me, Maxwell found out very quickly just how much Mijbil loved water. The second he took him into the bathroom, Mijbil went completely crazy with happiness. He would just plunge and roll around in the bathtub, splashing so much water everywhere you'd think a hippo was having a party in there. And here's the best part. He was so smart, he actually figured out how to turn on the tap all by himself. Can you believe that?
Okay, so Mijbil is finally getting comfortable. But now it's time for Maxwell to go back home to London. And this, my dear students, is where the story gets really dramatic. And honestly, it's also the funniest part of the whole chapter. Get ready for the great airplane adventure.
So trying to get Mijbil to London turned out to be a huge headache. The main British airline he wanted to take, they just said, no, we don't fly animals. So we had to find another airline, and they had this really strict rule. The pet had to be in a box, a tiny box, no bigger than 18 inches square. So Maxwell gets the box and thinks, okay, I'll put Mijbil inside for an hour before we leave just to get him used to it. And as you're about to find out, that was a very bad idea.
When Maxwell gets back after grabbing a quick meal, he finds something truly horrifying. The box is completely silent, and from the little air holes,
Blood is dripping out. Can you imagine the panic? He rips the lid open, and inside is poor Mijbil, totally exhausted, covered in blood. He had torn the sharp metal lining of the box to shreds in his fear. And the worst part? They had only 10 minutes to get to the airport.
Somehow they make it to the plane. Maxwell feels so bad for poor Mijbil, so he puts the box on his knees and just opens it a tiny bit. And poof! Mijbil is out like a shot. He disappears down the aisle. Total chaos. People are screaming everywhere, and this one lady leaps onto her seat, just shouting at the top of her lungs, "A rat! A rat!" Oh my goodness, can you just imagine the scene on that plane?
And if you think that's bad, it gets even funnier. So Maxwell sees Mijbil disappear under the legs of a gentleman wearing a turban. He dives to catch him, but he misses completely and lands face first in the man's lunch. And what was for lunch? Curry. So there's poor Maxwell, his face totally covered in curry. What an absolute disaster.
But in the middle of all this madness, there was one person who was a complete hero, the air hostess. She was just so calm and so kind. She didn't panic at all. She just smiled and said, "Sir, please go back to your seat. I'll find the animal and bring it to you." Maxwell was so impressed, so full of admiration for her, that he called her the very queen of her kind. Now that's a fantastic quote to use in your answers, so make sure you remember it. Phew! After that totally wild flight, Mijbil and Maxwell finally make it to London. So, the big question is, how does an otter from the quiet marshes of Iraq adjust to life in a huge, busy city like London? Well, let's find out. Well, it turns out Mijbil was a genius at inventing his own games. He figured out that he could lie on his back and just perfectly juggle his favorite marbles on his tummy. He would also play for hours with a ping-pong ball and a broken old suitcase. But his absolute favorite thing to do every single day? He would gallop at full speed along the top of a school wall, distracting all the students and teachers inside.
Now this part is just hilarious. You have to understand, nobody in London had ever seen an otter before, so people would just stare at Mijbil and come up with the wildest guesses you can imagine. They thought he was a baby seal, a squirrel, a walrus, even a hippo. And my favorite, one person actually thought he was a brontosaur, a dinosaur. It just goes to show you how truly strange and special Mijbil was to them.
Okay, bacho, time to get serious for a minute. We've had fun with the story. Now let's make sure you get those pakka marks in your exam. This is our quick revision section, so let's lock in all the important points. Focus now.
Okay, here is a very common 3-mark question that you might get on your paper. Describe the relationship between Mijbil and the author. So, when you see this question, you need to think about how their friendship started and how it grew and changed through the whole story.
Right, so here are the points for your answer. The most important thing is that their relationship developed over time. It didn't happen overnight. It started with Mijbil being distant, right? He was aloof. But then, slowly, it grew into this really close, loving bond. Mijbil started to follow Maxwell everywhere and would come whenever he was called. And what's the best proof of their bond? Think about it. It's on that crazy airplane. After being so scared and escaping, where does Mijbil go? He doesn't hide. He runs right back to Maxwell for comfort and nuzzles his face. That one moment tells you everything about their deep affection and trust.
And to finish, I want to leave you with a little something to think about. See, this story happened more than 60 years ago. It was a very different world back then. Today, we know a lot more about wild animals and have stricter laws to protect them. So I want you to ask yourself, do you think it's right to keep a wild animal as a pet today, even if you love it and take great care of it? There's no simple right or wrong answer, but it's a really important question that this beautiful story makes us think about. All right, that's all for today, my dear children. All the very best for your exams, and study well.